Gen AI isn't an experiment anymore, what we see now, but it's scaling. It is where most of the people and most of the companies are stumbling. It's not the model, but it's more the system. So the question is, what's really holding us back? I'm very excited to welcome Amy McNee. She's the Senior Vice President, Solution Architecture at Informatica, as we explore what it takes to scale Gen AI with the right data and the right mindset. Great to have you, Amy.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so if we talk about hurdles, what kind of hurdles do organizations hit when they are scaling Gen AI beyond the pilot phase?
This is a really common problem. In fact, I see most companies right now are stuck in the pilot phase, and I think we've done some research that shows that. I think other companies have as well. I think part of the problem is, look, it's one thing if you run an experiment with AI, right? You can pull a snapshot of data. It's limited to just a few people who are going to look at it. There's not a lot of risk there, and that's easy. So running an experiment is really easy, but it's not really representative of the challenge that you're going to have when you try to put it into full production, where you have to make sure that the data is clean. You have to make sure that your data doesn't have inherent bias in it. There's one example where it showed like this global education company, they were trying to do some automation with AI on their admissions process, and they started to reject people over 50 or 60 years old. I can't remember. There was one age range for women and one for men. And the reason was they had less data for that age range because there's fewer students than that sort of 18 to 24 kind of cohort. So their data had inherent bias. So if you think about when you're trying to run an experiment, you kind of control all of that a little better. But when you go into full production, you have to make sure that your data is complete and that it's clean. You also have to make sure that you can secure that data at scale, which means only the people who should use it are using it, and then it's being used in the right ways. And then it's also going back to education. You have to make sure people know how to use AI at scale in production, so they're using it, they're using it in a responsible way, and they're not going to do something that's going to get the company in trouble. So this is sort of like, think about an iceberg. This is all the stuff underneath the covers where companies have to have robust data quality and governance programs to make sure that they can actually execute AI at scale, not just in an experiment. And that's where I think a lot of companies are struggling.
Yeah, so if you see what is struggling with this data quality, but also with the education, what are the typical strategies that help them bridge the gap between Gen AI, let's call it the hype, and the implementation limits and challenges?
Yeah, and I think it's beyond just, we talk there. Gen AI is kind of the exciting new thing, right? Because it's gotten a lot of press and people are using it for their personal lives, and they're able to use it in a lot of different ways. But I think it's just AI in general as well. It goes well beyond Gen AI, but having that good quality, clean information that you're basing your models on is really important.
Yeah, and talking about this good quality data, how does the connected data management impact the Gen AI performance and especially as well the scale?
Yeah, so I have a funny example. So I've used this example. I'm going to use it again. I used it in a couple of our summits that we've had. So when we think about connected data management, when you think about any use case for anything, you have to move data, right, from somewhere. You have to orchestrate that data. You have to make sure that data is clean. You have to make sure that data is secured. You have to make sure that people can find that information. And then once they find it, you have to make sure that they actually understand what they've found, right? And then you have to make sure that they're using it in the right way. That's every single use case related to data. When you look at that, though, for even a lot of companies today, if you look at how they're organized around, they have data engineering, they have governance, they have MDM, right? They're organized around kind of like the way that tools evolved in the market. And that's not optimal for scaling Gen AI, because you need all of those things to work together. And the example I use in a lot of cases, because we're all excited about agentic AI, right? And I use this example in the summit where you think about the movie, if you guys remember the movie Terminator, right? We had Arnold Schwarzenegger. He He's this very advanced AI, agent, if you will. He travels through time and space in this weird little bubble. He comes into, the 1980s, and he's in search of Sarah Connor, but he doesn't know which Sarah Connor he's supposed to get. So what ensues is all of this chaos, all of these terrible things happen, which end up sort of resulting in the demise of Skynet, right? So, like, I don't care how powerful your AI is, if you don't have all of those underlying things working together, if your data is not clean, if you don't have that sort of golden record or that mastered set of information, so you know who you're marketing to or who you're trying to serve, all your agent is going to do, all that AI is going to do, is cause a lot of chaos and put your company at risk.
So you gave quite some different examples. What are the challenges? What can go wrong? So what can we learn from these Gen AI failures to avoid repeating them if we further scale?
I think if there is like one thing I would tell people to focus on, it's alignment. And that alignment starts with your corporate priorities. So look at what executives are saying are their top 3 priorities for the year. So if it's something like reducing costs in the supply chain, figure out how AI can help accelerate that or impact that. If it's about increasing customer satisfaction scores, align with that. These are laid out every year. These are the priorities of the company. So focus on value-based use cases and avoid building AI for AI's sake. I think that's the biggest lesson. I know I've seen one example where there was some analytics that a company wanted to get. And so they're like, oh, we're going to use AI to do that. Well, the reality was you could do exactly the same thing with Power BI, just running SQL against the data model. So you don't need to use AI as a blunt hammer. It's expensive too. So you want to make sure you're using it on the use cases that really need it, not just to show that you're using it. That's a big lesson. And then you always have to start with the idea of how you're going to scale. It goes back to our conversation about experimentation. If something works really good in a small lab, but you have no idea how you would scale that out, either to your customers or to your company, you got to figure that out first. It's not free, right? So you have to understand the underlying costs if you're going to deploy something at scale.
And I can't agree more, Amy. If you align with the business goals, on one hand, you get the support. If you deliver the success, everybody will be happy and will celebrate the success to further scale, which is a great foundation for scaling AI, for scaling Gen AI. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Amy, for all your great insights. And to the audience, looking forward to seeing you next time.